I built and launched an entire author business in just 30 days. And here's how I did it. My name is Katira O'Fray, and I write dark, spicy, paranormal romances. But what you might know me for is being a Starian's girlfriend and writing character analysis essays and doing challenge runs as someone who's been a narrative designer in the video game space. But first and foremost, I am an author, and I have been an author since back in 2011 when I published my first book as Catherine Petersdorf. I was just a little baby 18-year-old, and I have multiple degrees in publishing and have worked in publishing as an editor and ghostwriter for well over a decade. And I finally decided I'm going to do something for me. And last year I published 7 books. And this year, instead of just being in Kindle Unlimited and having a cover that I create myself and writing in my spare time, I decided to dedicate my existence to the thing that I love the most. Still have a day job, still have a YouTube and essays to write, but now I own my own publishing imprint, and I'm super excited to be going wide and offering free books and materials to you today, as well as sharing my journey on how I went from no author imprint and just putting books on Kindle Unlimited to having a professionally designed cover and being ready to launch across multiple platforms. So to be able to accomplish the task of starting your author business in 30 days, the most important thing that you need to have completed is a book. If you do not have a book completed, then you're not going to really be able to launch the same way that I did. You're still perfectly capable of launching and then recording on YouTube the entire process, how you're writing your book, how you're editing it, how you're finding everyone. And that's actually something that most author tubers do and is an incredibly productive way to go about that experience. That's what I plan on doing for my next 2 books. And I will talk about that later in the video for my readers. If you already have your book completed and edited, the next thing you're going to want to work on is hiring a professional cover designer. There are a multitude of ways to go about getting a cover. There are some people who will make pre-made covers where you just insert your title and author name. Well, the artist inserts it for you. And they can range anywhere from $35 to a couple of $100. Then you can go with having a custom cover. There are some bigger companies out there who tend to do book covers for ebooks in the $100 range. I personally decided to hire a professional artist. My cover for my ebook cost approximately $200, along with a cover reveal post for an additional cost. And then I also am going to be using them for the rest of the book series and hiring them to do additional marketing materials, Amazon A+ content, the book wrap for my print editions, etc., etc. However, I don't have all those funds at right this second, so I'm doing everything in phases, which is why I was able to launch in 30 days. Secondly, if you already have your book completed but you have not had your book edited, you really need to have an editor. If you cannot afford an editor, because most editors are approximately 10 cents a word, you are going to want to have beta readers and alpha readers. Again, if you don't have a community already built, you're going to have a really hard time following those. So if you're not able to afford a developmental edit, I'm not going to gatekeep you from putting your book out there. If your book is out there and it starts to do well, you can always pay to go back and have an editor. I was able to skip this step more confidently because I am a professional editor. However, I still use a line editing software because I'm human and I know what I meant to write and I see what I meant and not what I say sometimes. So I use Grammarly, which is approximately $60 every 3 months. It's about the same price as if someone was using, say, ChatGPT Pro to do line edits, because I think ChatGPT is $20 a month. I am okay with people using softwares to edit. Grammarly has been the industry standard, even in traditional publishing, for a very long time for when you need a quick line edit on something. It does not replace people. It is not as good as a person, but it is better than nothing. However, I'm not supportive of it generating your work for you. I don't think it should replace you as a writer ever, no matter what form of software it is. You're also going to want to decide what platform you're going to be on. If you want to go wide, then you're going to need it to be on multiple platforms. So if you're looking for platforms for ebooks, your platforms are going to be Amazon, Kobo, Nook or Barnes and Noble, Google, and Apple. If you are not someone who owns an Apple device, and when I say an Apple device, I mean a MacBook, but you have to have an Apple device to put your book on Apple. However, that said, I also greatly suggest working with Draft to Digital because they will get you onto multiple platforms as well as into platforms that will allow your ebook to be in libraries. If you're looking just to be on Amazon, then being in their Kindle Unlimited program is a great option. Just know that, like me, you're signing a 90-day contract and then you cycle through that contract. So make sure that you have your automatic renewal turned off if you want to ever publish wide when your contract ends. For formatting your ebook, there are two softwares that you can use. One of them, which is a software that I am using right now, is the Kindle Create, which is free and it helps create a book. You can then turn into a EPUB file, and that is what I upload on BookFunnel. However, when you're ready to be on other platforms, you're going to want to take the time to invest into Vellum because it will help format not only your print books, but your ebooks, because different e-readers read books differently. You're also going to want to know your pen name in advance and have a logo. For my logo, I made sure that I was featured in it, which meant that I needed to do a professional photo shoot. So I'm lucky enough as a content creator that I was able to borrow lighting equipment and cameras. Not everyone will have that option. However, you don't have to have your stuff on your logo at all. And if your brand is not around yourself like mine is, I would suggest not having your face in your logo and it being a logo that is related to your name. For about $15 a month, you can get Canva, and then you can use their pro features to create a much more attractive logo. And this can be a great placeholder until you can afford to hire an artist to work on your logo. And again, artists vary widely, but some logo artists can be as cheap as $30 and others can be as high as $200 or $300. You're also going to want to put together your blurb, which is going to be on your sales page on each of these platforms. It is worth it to invest time in having someone else, preferably another reader or writer in your genre, read your blurb and tell you what they think. However, if you don't have the time or the connections to do this, again, just make sure that you run it through an editing software to make sure that you don't have a bunch of blaring mistakes. You'll also going to want to make sure that you have a list of what all of your genres are based on BISAC codes. So you can Google BISAC codes, but these codes are universal among everywhere, and they'll help better identify where your book should be in a bookstore. Not all platforms are as detailed. Some platforms I can go as far as romance, paranormal, poly. Some will only stop at paranormal. So you're going to want to make sure you have your overhead genre, your overhead subgenres, and your more niche topics. Most platforms give you a maximum of 3 that you can select. You're also going to want to have some sort of newsletter to capture people's emails because at the end of the day, you don't own the social media platform that you're on and you can get banned, or that platform like TikTok can get banned. So you're going to want to have some kind of newsletter set up. I chose to go with MailerLite because it can start for free. I don't expect to have a massive amount of followers right away. I don't think I'll have the 250 follower limit right away. However, sometimes if you have a really big audience, that might actually be the case. But what I like about MailerLite is you can start for free and then you can scale up, but you can also save all of your contacts and transfer them to a different software that is a better price later if that's what you want. It also integrates with BookFunnel, which is something that you're going to want to have. If you want to be able to capture emails, you are going to have a paid version of BookFunnel. This is either $200 a year or $20 a month. To save money up front, I went with the $20 a month, but I am going to be upgrading to the 1 year. They do have a version that you can pay for the whole year in advance for $35. However, you cannot link it into your newsletter and you can't join certain kinds of promotions. If you don't want to give away your whole book for free because you only have one book, you're going to want to create some kind of sample. Personally, when it comes to samples, when I worked in publishing, you would want to take whatever your trope is and stop right before the payoff of that trope's very first arc. For example, I am doing a vampire billionaire kidnapping romance. The best place to stop that sample is right before the kidnapping would happen because then it makes people want to continue to read it. Sorry, I ruined that for you readers. That's what's about to happen to you. Now, if you were doing like a fantasy series and you have the Fallen Kingdom Rise of the Young Prince, you would want to end your sample right after the kingdom fell, but before you see them years later, so that you're curious what happened to the characters in that epic battle. You can do samples on BookFunnel. Just make sure that you make it very clear that it is a sample, even if that means adding like a bright red bar across your beautiful cover that says sample. People will sign up for your newsletter and it will create a list that you will have to download at the end of either every day or week, depending on how many people sign up, and insert into your MailerLite. Now, when you're in your MailerLite, you can set up an automation cycle, and that automation cycle can be your welcome email, then a follow-up email that reminds people to either purchase the book if you were doing a sample or leave the book a review. If you have a series, it's also good to encourage them to read the next book in the series. Make sure that you have a plan for content for your newsletter before you just have people sign up for a newsletter, because otherwise you have a bunch of emails and people will forget about you and will forget about the projects you're working on. So my suggestion is that you have at least 3 or 4 newsletters that you've already planned out, which is what I went in doing, because I'm going to be giving away chapters from the book that I am working on, that is the next series that will come out after the Gemstone Souls. And then finally, you're going to want to build your marketing campaign coming up to your release, because usually when you make a big announcement about releasing a brand, you're going to want to have your launch day, but you want to have social media leading up to that. I would suggest, again, having Canva so that you can make graphics in advance, but also downloading apps that will allow you to film in them. Instagram has its own, TikTok has its own. Also, CapCut. CapCut can be free, and then you can trim off the little black part at the end in your editor inside of like YouTube, for example. Or if you post it directly to TikTok and you have save to device set up, it will automatically download a version without a watermark from either TikTok or CapCut that you can then post onto other platforms. This was how I started way back when I started doing content creation. Now I have the paid version of it. I actually joined when it was a beta, so I have it for very cheap. I think for the computer, it's like $20 or $25 a month, but it is absolutely worth it to have some kind of editing software. Anytime that you post graphics, make sure that they look appealing and are worth stopping on a scroll. And anytime you post a video, I highly suggest, if it's a short, having some sort of automated captions that pop up either in branding colors, yellow, or that have some kind of emoji associated with them. CapCut has a really great platform for doing those type of captions. I have them all saved to a type of favorites, and I have ones for brand coloring, and I have ones for emojis, and I have ones that are just bright and yellow and always catch people's attention. Just keep in mind, you're not always going to get it right the first time. When I started doing content creation on this specific channel, I did get really lucky, but this is the third channel I've had in my life. Because remember, at 18, I decided to start a company, and I have changed career paths since then, as far as I went from just being an author and working in film to then working in writing and publishing, and now I am a legal editor because, well, the publishing industry kind of collapsed a little bit during the pandemic. But that is to say, you're never going to get it right the first time. You just kind of have to try. You have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. So you're going to do things that are cringe. You're going to do things that don't do well and have no views, but you have to keep doing them and learn from them. And even though your analytics are evil and make you hate your life, they also can be incredibly insightful. Hopefully, for everyone who is an aspiring author or business person, that was a great little educational moment for you. And before we go any further, I wanted to say that I'm going to be offering the first book in the Gemstone Soul series for free starting today. And you can find that link either up here in the cards, down in the description, or in the pinned comment. The Gemstone Soul series is a dark, spicy, paranormal vampire romance. It's why choose and enemies to lovers. So, if you love a tyrant who will kneel for nobody but her, a best friend who comes back into your life, a vampire who is the most honor-bound, restrictive Regency man you've ever met, but secretly totally a dom, and a monster hunter who is just desperate to be approved, well then, baby girl, come and join us. Also, you do not have to have Amazon to get this freebie. You can sign up for the newsletter at the link below and read it through BookFunnel, which will give you an EPUB version that you can read either in their library or download and read on any of your e-reader devices.